Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. Hey guys, we're your hosts, Em and Jay, and today we're talking about Season 4, Episode 5 of Netflix's She-Ra. This is mostly a filler episode, but it gets kind of frustrating because it keeps seeming like we're going to learn something interesting about the history of the world, only for it to not deliver on anything. And honestly, a lot of the episode is just wasted time. That being said, there were aspects of the episode that we did enjoy. It focuses on the lesser characters from the Horde, Kyle, Lonnie, and Rogelio, which was unexpected, but these characters are actually pretty likable. I'm not sure if that was intentional or not, but that ended up being the case in the end. There's also a B-plot with Adora, but it's mostly just her stuck with Lighthope in the Crystal Castle, and this was the one that we thought was frustrating. Most of it was just jokes that went on too long and wore out their welcome, which has been an issue with the comedy of this show from the beginning. There's also a pacing issue. They typically spend about a minute on each plot and then randomly switch between them, cutting scenes off in the middle of them just to check in with the other characters, and I don't think this benefits the episode at all. It just messes up the pacing and the flow of the narrative, and the plot's already not that strong. The episode centers around a weather anomaly happening in the Whispering Woods. It's some kind of spore cloud that rains corrosive acid into the area. It's kind of strange that this hasn't been established before. They've spent a lot of time in the Whispering Woods, and it's season 4 of the show, and we're only now discovering that this is something that can happen. They've literally slept in the Whispering Woods without any kind of shelter, but it also raises a lot of questions. This corrosive acid seems to not affect plant life in the Whispering Woods. Otherwise, they would be massive forest fires right now, but it does burn through metal, so at first we thought it didn't affect organic life, but that doesn't turn out to be the case because the characters get horribly burned. So this whole anomaly is really confusing. Is it a natural part of the forest ecosystem, and all the plants have some kind of protection from it? To be honest, it felt more like a plot device than actual world building. It opens with Lonnie, Kyle, and Rogelio driving through the Whispering Woods. Lonnie's having difficulty driving through the terrain, and the vehicle they're in only has 2 seats, so Kyle's stuck in the back being tossed around like luggage. Lonnie exposits that Catra sent them behind enemy lines so they can get some material, but the spores end up damaging their transport and it stalls. Meanwhile, Adora is training with Lighthope in the Crystal Castle. Lighthope has her fighting more bots, but Adora is bored and cocky. She yawns while she's fighting and she takes them out easily, which I wouldn't have a problem with, except last episode the rebellion got their butts kicked by a bunch of bots, and that was before the new exploding bot that almost killed Bo. There's a lot of inconsistencies. It could be the writers not communicating with each other, but it could just depend on what the plot demands. One episode they need the Princess Alliance to lose so the bots are super effective. The next episode they need She-Ra to be bored with training so now the bots are super easy, barely an inconvenience. Adora says she doesn't need training, she needs answers. They're fighting a war and the Horde keeps being one step ahead. It would be nice to get answers. We've been hoping for answers since the first season, and I get the feeling they're still not ready to give them to us. Adora's still worried that the Horde might be tracking her, and she's not sure if it's the sword or if it's because she's a first one. And she still has a lot of questions about the first ones as well as Mara. Lighthope just insists that Mara became unhinged, but Adora says she seemed more scared than unhinged. But Lighthope insists that all will be clear once she balances the planet, and that it's her purpose as She-Ra to do so, before she starts glitching. Adora gets really annoyed and says that she's trying to avoid the subject, but apparently the Crystal Castle is being affected by the Spore Storm. Lighthope is glitching, the door is jammed shut, and the castle is corroding. I wonder how Bo's family's library is holding up. Adora tries to leave even though the door is jammed, and Lighthope tells her she can't because it's not safe outside with the storm. Adora remarks that that's convenient so she can just be stuck here with Lighthope who won't answer any of her questions. But then Lighthope goes offline. When Lighthope comes back online she doesn't recognize Adora. Adora asks what's going on, and Lighthope says that her system has to reboot. So the rest of their plot is Adora having to deal with a glitchy and forgetful Lighthope, which gets really repetitive really quickly. Back in the woods, the trio are examining their convoy to try to figure out what's wrong. Kyle's nervous about being behind enemy lines, and Lonnie's upset that Catra sent them through the Whispering Woods just to save time, even though she knew it would be risky for them. Lonnie and Rogelio notice that it's burning through their transport, but Kyle mistakes it for being snow-like, and ends up burning himself when he tries to catch it on his tongue. It snows in the Fright Zone? That's fun to know, but he seriously needs medical attention right away. Lonnie and Rogelio get burned too, so they all run inside the convoy for protection. Connie figures they're going to have to go back outside to fix the problem, otherwise they're going to be stuck having to wait out this storm. But Kyle's happy to be stuck here instead of back in the Fright Zone, since the Fright Zone has been extremely stressful lately and they don't have to worry about Catra popping in to yell at them, only for Catra to pop up on the screen behind him, and she yells at them for taking so long. Lonnie tries to explain about the acid storm, but Catra isn't really interested. She just wants the material there now so they can move forward with their plan. Lonnie Lonnie asks for clarification on the plan so that maybe they could help her, but Catra just yells at them some more, saying they failed to do the one thing she asked already. Lonnie protests, saying that it's too dangerous for them to go outside to fix it because of the acid. Catra starts screaming at them, and her hair gets all messy like an unhinged anime character. She says she doesn't care if it's dangerous and they should just pick someone and get it over with. Then she straightens up her hair and asks if they understand her. Lonnie reluctantly agrees, and Catra finally hangs up. She's really asking for a mutiny here. Lonnie screams in frustration, and I can't blame her. Catra's being totally unreasonable, as usual. Kyle tries to take the opportunity to say that he's not going outside by playing the nose goes game, but the other two aren't in the mood. Something tells me Kyle's gonna be the one stuck going outside. This was a pretty painful scene, but I do like seeing these characters bounce off of each other. They have an interesting dynamic, and seeing things through their perspective is refreshing for this show. Meanwhile, Adora is still trapped in the Crystal Castle. Lighthope is still in the process of rebooting, and she has a totally different personality. She's actually kind of fun, which is very different from how stern she usually is. She still doesn't know who Adora is, so Adora introduces herself and says that she's She-Ra. Lighthope gets really excited and says that her primary function is to train She-Ra, and Adora thinks she can take advantage of this by finally getting some answers. Lighthope is actually really excited to help Adora, but she admits that that information hasn't loaded yet, so she doesn't have any answers for her, which Adora's very annoyed by. Honestly, most of the scenes with Adora and Lighthope in this episode are them messing around. It gets pretty repetitive, and we don't learn much. We get to learn a little bit more about Lighthope, who is a character that we don't know much about despite being introduced in the first season. But do we need half the episode to be dedicated to these shenanigans? She's really excited to learn new things like how to move around the castle and how to affect the gravity, and she is having fun, so it's nice to know she wasn't always a stick in the mud. But this is about what we get for the entire episode, with Adora and Lighthope in the castle. Back at the transport, they're trying to figure out what to do. One of them is going to have to go out there to fix it, so Lonnie suggests that they try to play their version of rock, paper, scissors, bot, shield, laser. Kyle asks why she gets to choose the game they play, and she insists it's because she's the leader. Rogelio protests, but Lonnie takes advantage of the fact that he doesn't actually speak, so she claims that he agrees with her, even though his body language was saying otherwise. It's interesting to see more of Rogelio, since we don't know anything about him. We didn't even know his name for a really long time. Everyone just knew him as the lizard guy, and seeing him try to communicate non-verbally is interesting, especially in an environment like the Horde where everyone's mostly out for themselves. But I also wonder why Rogelio can't speak. There are a lot of anthropomorphic characters in this show, including other lizard people, like Tongue Lasher, and that general from the Horde. So was he just born that way, or did something happen in his past? They try playing the game, but they end up tying. There's also a point where Kyle cheats so he doesn't lose, and normally I would criticize someone for doing that, but this is probably a tactic he uses to survive in the Horde. Plus, instead of cheating to win, he just cheated so none of them would have to go outside, even though we all know that Kyle's gonna be the one to go outside, but you know, still. It then cuts back to Adora, and to be honest, I don't really think this scene was necessary, and probably could have been cut and replaced with something a little more interesting. It's basically just a bunch of jokes again. Adora hits the ground after Lighthope turns the gravity back on, and she apologizes for hurting her, but Adora just asks if there's anything useful that's loaded yet. Lighthope asks if spiders are useful because she just learned how to make them. Adora starts panicking and insists that she get rid of them, even though she was just making quick work of those bots earlier in the episode. I guess spiders are more difficult than bots, but still. Unfortunately, Lighthope doesn't have the information on how to get rid of them, so Adora transforms into She-Ra and struggles to fight them off, and that's pretty much it. Didn't really feel like that scene accomplished anything, and most of the episode, particularly with Adora's plot, is like this. And it's pretty frustrating because we know that once Lighthope regains her memory, she's gonna go back to avoiding the situation and just saying that everything will be clear once the planet is balanced, instead of giving us answers like she promises she will here, and it just feels like they're stringing the audience along. Anyway, Lighthope's reboot gets stalled, so they're going to have to manually override the system, but in order to do that, they're going to have to get past all these spiders. She-Ra's making a dent in them, but Lighthope tries to help only to make more spiders by accident, so she tries to fix her mistake by flooding the room, thinking that spiders can't swim. Adora tries to say something, but then a spider pulls her under. Maybe it's just that we have a different sense of humor, but none of this is coming off as funny to us. It just seems like a waste of screen time. Meanwhile, back at the transport, rock, paper, scissors isn't working, so they decide to try a different game. Rogelio suggests a ball and cup, but Kyle has a different idea and breaks his toy. Kyle, I love you, but that was mean. He makes up a game where they have to get the ball into a helmet, which isn't a bad idea, but he also makes up different moves that are worth different points, and he keeps changing what the rules are, even though none of those rules make sense. The others get annoyed with him, and rightfully so, but he ends up hitting himself in the head with the ball, which he deserved. He tries to play it off, but they get distracted by more important things. The acid rain is eating through the transport. It then cuts abruptly back to Adora and Light Hope. We're about halfway through the episode, but it feels a lot longer, just because nothing's really happening. We get a scene with the Horde kids where nothing is accomplished, then we get a scene of Adora and Light Hope where nothing gets accomplished, and then we switch back for more of the Horde kids. Adora wakes up to find that the spiders and all the water is gone. That's a good thing. And Light Hope apologizes, saying she didn't know Adora couldn't swim. Adora explains that she can swim, she just can't breathe underwater. And Light Hope says she'll make a note of that, but she'll probably end up getting her memory wiped again. The acid spores outside have started to eat through the Crystal Castle, and it's now falling apart. This stuff is pretty serious. If the Crystal Castle can't hold up to it, how can anything else hold up to it? What are Bo's parents doing right now? Adora and Light Hope run to the processing unit while dodging debris, but it has 2 ports. Light Hope says to use the left one, and Adora asks if she's sure, but she admits she can't be 100% sure because she hasn't fully loaded. But Adora doesn't really have time to argue because the castle's falling apart, so she puts the crystal in the left port, but it seems to set Light Hope back to 0%, and she asks Adora who she is again. So that scene didn't accomplish anything, and we're back to square one. Meanwhile, Kyle wonders if anyone's going to come to save them. Lonnie says no and that they're going to have to save themselves, and laments that they shouldn't even bother since Catra doesn't care about them, and thinks they're expendable for the sake of her plan. Kyle actually sticks up for Catra, saying that even though she's mean, they've always had their back since they were kids, and they're the only family he's ever known. I think this conversation should have been the main focus of this episode, instead of it coming at 14 minutes into it, since this is actually interesting. Kyle brings up the time that Catra used his ration bars to make that cake for Adora, as an example of them being close, but Lonnie explains that that never actually happened. It was from the weird reality that the portal created when it was set off, back in the finale of season 3. Kyle and Rogelio were lost to the void pretty early on in that episode, and Adora was able to explain to Lonnie that none of that was real, so it makes sense that Kyle wouldn't know about that. But it's also interesting and kind of sad that he looks back on this memory as a positive thing, like he's really been conditioned by all the bullying. To be fair, they're all abused and that's going to manifest in different ways, but it's still a pretty tragic situation. But even after realizing that never happened, he still insists they're a unit. Lonnie laughs at this idea, and then insists that none of that is true, that Catra doesn't care about them and Adora left them. Everything the Horde preached about loyalty was meaningless, and then in the end, it's everyone for themselves. I really wish the show would put more emphasis on this, because this is actually an interesting situation. Adora never really reflects on what she left behind in the Horde. She got new friends and a new home and never really looked back, and she definitely never considers Kyle, Rogelio, and Lonnie, but the show will occasionally bring it up when it wants to be dramatic, like right now. But we never had a basis for their friendship. The closest we ended up getting was from that portal reality, but this moment would have been stronger if we had seen the extent of their friendships. And to be honest, I have a hard time believing they were friends with Catra. They barely ever interact besides Catra bossing them around, and way back in episode 3 of the first season, Lonnie straight up threatened Catra.
Easy, Catra. Adora's not here to protect you anymore.
That was before she was promoted to their superior, and I'm kind of surprised that was never brought up again. That could have led to some good drama, but that didn't end up being the case. So it would have been interesting if they had really reflected on Adora, and how they feel betrayed by her. Obviously Kyle can't admit that he was trying to lead the Horde, but he could bring up how he was guarding Bo and he's not that great, so why would Adora leave them for him? Bo gained Kyle's trust and then used him to get information about the Horde, then betrayed him and never looked back, and the show has kind of ignored this since it happened. And I think it's a missed opportunity because there's so much drama you can get out of these situations. Like, are the good guys really the good guys if they're willing to betray people like that? Along with all the betrayed friendship stuff. But Kyle insists that if nothing matters, then he'll just go out there, because it's better than being stuck in here with people he thought were his friends but actually aren't. So he puts the helmet on and starts heading out there. Apparently they don't have the rest of their armor, which is a little strange. I just assumed that they would carry it with them in their convoy. But I like that even though Kyle is the one going out there, it has a narrative purpose, instead of them just bullying him out there. The others even try to stop him, so it shows that they do care about him even if it is deep down. But for once, Kyle puts his foot down and goes out there, leaving Lonnie and Rogelio pretty perplexed. Back at the Crystal Castle, it turns out nothing has changed. It was the wrong slot, because of course it was. Adora ends up yelling at Light Hope and saying that she's useless. She immediately regrets it, but Light Hope says that her primary function is to train She-Ra, and if she's not doing that, it might mean she failed, so she disappears, just as the part of the castle falls apart and the spores come in. I guess she forgot about that part. Adora starts calling to Light Hope, but she hears someone else calling out to Light Hope too. She follows it and it turns out to be a memory of Mara, back when she was She-Ra and Light Hope was training her. Light Hope is a lot more cheerful in the memory, which is very different from how stern she usually is, and more like the way she's currently acting. I prefer this version actually. She's a lot nicer to be around. In the memory, Mara brings Light Hope flowers, and she asks her to smell them. Obviously Light Hope is a hologram so she can't smell, so instead she replicates the flowers in the castle, which makes Mara happy. Mara seems like a nice person. She's cheerful and considerate, and she thinks about doing nice things for people. I wouldn't mind seeing more of her. Light Hope tells Adora that she was looking for the answers that she's been asking for, but this was all she could find in her memory banks concerning Mara. Adora's surprised to see that Mara and Light Hope were close, and Light Hope realizes that the two of them aren't close. Adora says it's because Light Hope keeps things from her. She knows that Light Hope keeps saying that it's not the right time, but it's also annoying. Light Hope says it's her job to watch over She-Ra and train her to the best of her abilities, but she feels like sometimes those abilities aren't enough, and Adora says she feels the same way. Adora apologizes about Mara, and she says she's sorry that she's not her, but maybe the two of them can be friends, and Light Hope agrees. Well, that was a nice moment. Too bad Light Hope's gonna forget all this. Meanwhile, Kyle is pushing through the spores to fix the transport. Lonnie tries to get him to come back inside by talking to him through the earpiece, but Kyle turns it off. He finds the issue, but I'm surprised there isn't more damage to the vehicle at this point. They've been stuck out here for quite a while, but it's still just that same wire that was damaged from the beginning of the episode. Regardless, Kyle gets to work on soldering it back together. Unfortunately, the acid starts eating through his helmet and clothes, but he's determined to see this through, so he repairs the wire but passes out from exhaustion, leaving him completely vulnerable to the acid. Lonnie and Rogelio are regretting letting him go out there alone. Rogelio suggests that they use the armor plating that they were supposed to bring to Catra, since it's basically their only option, even though Catra will kill them if it's damaged, but they resolve to do it anyway, finally coming to terms with the fact that they are friends and a family. Lonnie takes Kyle inside while Rogelio checks the transport, only to find that it's already been fixed. The acid ends up destroying the armor plating that was shielding Lonnie and Kyle, and Lonnie ends up struggling to get back inside, so Rogelio rushes over and carries the two of them in, and they're finally able to get their transport working and escape the woods. I'm surprised their helmet and armor plating was almost immediately disintegrated, but their transport was able to hold up so well. Maybe they should just use whatever material the transport is made of to make new armor, cause it kind of feels like this is really imbalanced, and the acid is doing as much damage as the plot demands it to. That being said, this was actually a really intense scene, and it's really cool to see these characters in a new light. I think it did a good job at showing who these characters are, showing us their flaws and strengths and how they were able to come together in such a dire situation. Kyle was really brave to go out there, and it was great to see Lonnie and Rogelio make that sacrifice to go save him, especially after the fight they had. This was great character development. They're just a bunch of kids who were raised in an abusive environment, forced to be child soldiers and to serve a cruel dictator, while also putting their lives on the line, but also learning that despite that fact, they do care about each other, and that looking out for each other is the best way to survive. Unfortunately, the acid seems to dissipate pretty quickly after they leave. I don't know if it was just a transition and it meant to imply that there was more time that passed, but it seems like they probably could have just waited it out, and all of this could have been avoided, and that kind of sucks. Kyle wakes up to Lonnie and Rogelio tending his wounds, and is happy to know they do care, despite everything they said. Lonnie tries to play it off, saying they knew he'd mess it up, but Rogelio intervenes. He starts giving a speech, but he doesn't actually talk, so he's just roaring the entire time. His mannerisms imply that he's being really serious and deep, but this also goes on for quite a while, longer than it needs to. We get it, he can't talk and he's giving a speech, but it's just not that funny. Lonnie and Kyle give confused looks at each other, and Kyle just shrugs, but they say they agree with him, even though they have no idea what he's talking about. Anyway, Lonnie says they have to get back to the fright zone and tells Kyle to keep his leg elevated, and Kyle's finally able to rest easy, knowing once and for all who his true friends are. I don't see why they have to go back to the fright zone. It seems like they're finally on the same page about how terrible that place is. They could just fake their own deaths. This acid storm is a perfect cover-up. They can just keep driving. Basically anywhere would be better than the fright zone. But no, they go back home, which is a shame. It was really nice to get a taste of these characters' potential, and they had more range than I expected. I wish I could say the same about Adora's plot, though. Adora and Light Hope get back to the ports, and Adora asks if she's sure this is gonna work. Light Hope says she's about 36% sure, but it's their only other option anyway. Is it really worth worrying about it? Adora says it'll it'll have to do and she plugs it in. And it works. Light Hope is at 100% and everything comes back online. And the tower repairs itself. So I don't know what the point of that other port is. It probably just existed so they could have this mix-up. But Light Hope is back to her stern ways. She tells Adora that the Spore Storm is over so she can leave now. And Adora asks if that means she doesn't want to hang out anymore. Light Hope goes back to telling Adora that she still needs to train and balance the planet. And Adora's not wrong, it is pretty annoying. But Adora tries to stay positive and tells Light Hope that she can trust her now that they're friends. And Light Hope goes back to saying that all will be revealed once she balances the planet. Adora walks off, saying to herself that they'll get there. So I guess the only thing that this plot accomplished in this episode was that Adora has a better understanding of Light Hope, which is something, but I don't think it was enough considering how much time was spent on it. Now that Light Hope's alone, she's going over the memory of her and Mara. She's surprised it still exists because apparently it was supposed to be purged due to some Heart of Etheria project. This is the first time this has been brought up. So she permanently deletes it and then the episode ends with her looking all sinister. I mean, we all knew she was evil from season 1, so I guess this is finally confirmation of something. Too bad it was this. Overall, a lot of this episode felt like a waste of time, but it did have a few strong moments. I really appreciated that they gave Kyle some screen time. He's been a very likable character and he always gets the short end of the stick, so it was pretty cool that he got a hero moment. We also got to see another side of Lonnie and Rogelio, who are characters who have been around since the beginning and grew up with Adora, but they don't really get a lot of screen time, except to be lackeys. It really shows that there is a lot more that can be done with these characters. On the other hand, we didn't get very far with Adora. At the beginning of the episode, she didn't know anything, and at the end of the episode, she still doesn't know anything. It seemed like she got to learn something about Light Hope, but it looks like that version is long gone. So we got a whole episode and just not much from it. And it ended up feeling really repetitive. But that's our review. Let us know what you guys thought. If you enjoyed this review, you can leave a like and subscribe to see more content like this. And we'll see you in the next video. Bye everyone. Bye guys.